The biggest names in tennis are fed up. Jannik Sinner, Aryna Sabalenka, Coco Gauff. These are not fringe players complaining from the sidelines. These are the faces of the sport, the people millions of fans pay to watch, and right now, they are publicly telling Roland Garros, one of the most prestigious tournaments in the world, that enough is enough. And before you think this is just athletes being greedy, stay with me, because the numbers behind this story are going to genuinely surprise you. Roland Garros just announced that prize money for this year's French Open is going up. 61.7 million euros total. That sounds like a lot, right? That sounds generous. That sounds like the tournament is taking care of its players. But here is where it gets interesting. Here is where the Real story begins. Because when you look at what Roland Garros is actually making, that number starts to look very, very different. The tournament generated 395 million euros in revenue in 2025 alone, a 14% increase year on year. The sport is growing. The audiences are bigger. The sponsorship deals are richer. The broadcast rights are more valuable than ever. And yet, prize money only went up by 5.4%. Not 14%, 5.4%. So, the tournament is growing faster than it is paying the people who make it worth watching. Let that sink in for a second. In 2024, players received 15.5% of Roland Garros tournament revenue. This year, that number is projected to drop to 14.9%. Next year, with revenues expected to cross 400 million euros, it could fall even further. The players are asking for 22%, which would bring the Grand Slams in line with what players already receive at ATP and WTA, combined 1,000 events. Right now, they are getting less than 15. That is not even close. Now, let's talk about what the winners actually take home, because this part of the story matters too. The singles champions, men and women, each receive 2.8 million euros. The runners-up get 1.4 million. Semi-finalists walk away with 750,000 euros. And if you lose in the first round, you earn 87,000 euros. On the surface, those numbers sound fine. They sound like professional tennis pays well. And for the players who consistently make deep runs in major tournaments, it does. But professional tennis has hundreds of players outside the top 20, outside the top 50, who are grinding through qualifiers, paying for coaches, paying for travel, paying for physios, and living tournament to tournament. First-round prize money helps, but it does not solve the structural problem these players are raising. And this is the part of the conversation that does not get enough attention. This is not just about prize money. The players' statement says they have made proposals on welfare, including pensions and long-term health care for professional players, and they have received zero response. Not a partial response. Not a "we're looking into it." Nothing. These are athletes whose careers are physically brutal, whose bodies take years of punishment on hard courts, clay courts, and grass, who retire often in their early 30s with injuries that follow them for the rest of their lives, and the institutions that profit most from their performance have not engaged on the question of what happens to them after they stop playing. Think about what that means. Think about any other major sport and ask yourself whether the governing bodies would get away with complete silence on player welfare proposals. The answer is no. The NFL has a pension system. The NBA has one. European football clubs contribute to player welfare funds. Tennis at the Grand Slam level, the most prestigious, most watched, most commercially valuable tier of the entire sport, has apparently not even written back. The players also raised the issue of representation. Not money, not welfare, just a seat at the table. A voice in decisions that directly affect their lives and their careers. Roland Garros sets the schedule. It sets the court assignments. It sets the rules around how matches are played, when they are played, under what conditions they are played. And the people playing those matches have no formal representation in those decisions. The players are asking for fair and transparent inclusion in Grand Slam decision-making. And according to their statement, they have made no progress on this at all. What makes this moment feel significant is who is saying it and how they are saying it. This is not a union filing a grievance. This is not a press conference where one frustrated player goes off script. This is a coordinated, unified statement from the biggest names in the sport, including the current world number one on the men's side, one of the most dominant women's players of her generation, and one of the most recognizable young athletes on the planet. They are speaking together. They are using the same language, and they are doing it publicly weeks before Roland Garros begins, in a way that is clearly designed to apply maximum pressure before the cameras arrive in Paris. The players referenced something important in their statement. They pointed to other major international sports and said those sports are modernizing. They are aligning stakeholders. They are building long-term value. The Grand Slams, they said, remain resistant to change. That is a pointed criticism. That is the kind of language that signals genuine frustration, not just a negotiating position. These players are not threatening to boycott. They are not making ultimatums, but they are drawing a very clear line between what they see as a modern, professionally governed sport and what they say the Grand Slams currently represent. Here is the broader context that matters. Tennis is genuinely booming right now. The men's game has arguably the most exciting young generation it has ever had. Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, and others are driving audience numbers through the roof. The women's game has Sabalenka, Gauff, Iga Swiatek, and Mira Andreeva creating a golden era of depth and competition. Streaming deals are expanding. Sponsors are flooding in. New audiences in new markets are discovering the sport. This is exactly the moment when the institutions that run the biggest events should be investing in the people driving that growth, locking in their loyalty, and building the kind of trust that sustains a sport for decades. Instead, the players are having to issue public statements about not getting responses to their proposals. The French Open starts on May 24th in Paris. In a few weeks, the cameras will roll, the crowds will fill the stands, the clay will be freshly laid, and the world will watch some of the most extraordinary athletes on the planet compete at the highest level. And in the background of all of it will be this unresolved tension. This gap between what the tournament earns and what the players receive. This silence on pensions and healthcare. This absence of representation. These players will compete because they love the sport, because it is their profession, because Roland Garros is Roland Garros and no player wants to miss it. But they will compete having made their position clear. The question now is whether the people running the tournament will respond, not with a press release about how much prize money has increased, not with percentages that sound impressive in isolation, but with a genuine conversation, a real seat at the table, and a willingness to look at the full picture, including what happens to players after the cameras stop following them. Because at 14.9% of revenue, the math is not complicated. The tournament is worth more than ever. The players are the reason. And right now, the people counting the money and the people making it are not on the same page.